Welcome back to another exciting segment of Middlesex Matters. My name is Tom Golden, State Representative for the City of Lowell and the Town of Chelmsford. I'm your co-host. Excuse me, I'm one of the co-hosts, I should say, because I'm here with my good friend from Middlesex Community College, Mr. Terrence Downs. Terry, how are you?
I am fine, Tom. Good to see you. Good to be back on Middlesex Matters.
Absolutely. All is going well. The weather is breaking for us.
Things are good. Exams are going on. The kids are taking their final exams, and they'll be graduating soon. So life is good.
Well, one of these days, Terry, they'll let you out of Middlesex Community
I hope
College.
so.
One of these days.
I've only been there 12 years.
But Terry, we have a very interesting group with us today. Would you like to do some introductions?
We do. We've talked a lot here about the opioid crisis. We've heard from physicians. We've heard from policymakers. What we haven't heard from, we've heard from victims and victims advocates. What we haven't heard from are the people who actually go out on the street and intervene in opioid emergencies. And so we're very happy and honored to have today two representatives from Trinity EMS, Trinity being Lowell's Emergency Medical Service. Rick Barry, who is the Operations Director for Trinity EMS, and Kirk Brigham, who is their Clinical Director. So Kirk and Rick, welcome to Middlesex Matters.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
First, how did you guys get into the emergency medical business? Rick, we'll start with you. How long have you been in the
All
business?
the pressure here, Rick,
20
is
years.
right on you.
20 years.
20 years. I started in 1996.
Wow.
I grew up here in the city of Lowell, and like a lot of people in Lowell, my parents and my grandparents had police scanners, and so I was always listening to what was going on. And I think what probably sealed it for me was going to my grandmother's house every afternoon. Emergency was on at 4 o'clock, the 70s TV show with the LA County Fire Department paramedics,
right.
and so I'd watch that with my grandmother, and that probably solidified it for me and got me interested in EMS as a career.
And how long with Trinity?
My whole 20 years, my whole career's been here.
The whole 20 years.
Yes.
Wow, that is terrific.
Yeah, it's been a great place to get experience and to work, and I've been lucky to have been able to be here.
And as the operations director at Trinity, what sort of work do you do? What does that mean, being the operations director?
So the operations side is really putting the people into the ambulances, making sure that they have the equipment necessary to do the job, the training necessarily to do the job, and they can go out there and take care of the people.
Different protocols that must be followed at all times to ensure safety for everyone.
Yeah, some of the protocols are on the clinical side, and some of them are operational policies of the way we'll handle an emergency specifically.
And Kirk Brigham, you're a paramedic, you're which is an EMT with a lot more training. How did you get into the field? How long have you been at it? And what's the difference between a paramedic and an EMT?
So I've been in the field for 20 plus years as well, just as long as Rick has. I started out in a restaurant. Rewind back to when I was 22 years old, working in a restaurant, and we had a patron choke in the restaurant.
Wow.
And I was trained in CPR at the time. I was not an EMT.
Right.
And the owner came back and said, somebody dial 911, I have a customer that's choking. So I went out to the dining room and applied my training, my CPR training that I had been trained, and relieved, using the Heimlich maneuver, relieved the choking.
Wow.
And that kind of sparked my interest, and I said, I can make a difference, and I like doing that.
So you saved,
that's not an everyday.
The person's life, the diner's life.
You could say that. Shrimp popped out. We were a waterfront restaurant in Gloucester.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, that's fascinating.
It sparked my interest, and I went on to EMT training in 1994, and I've been in the field ever since.
And so now EMT training these days, to become an EMT,
Yep.
how long is that training typically?
Typically it's a 4 to 5 month program.
Okay.
And all paramedics are EMTs at heart. That's where they began their careers.
Okay.
And then you go for that additional training. It's about 1,500 plus hours.
1,500 hours in
On
classroom
top.
setting or some type of...
It's a mixed classroom and clinical experience.
So to be an EMT 4 to 5 months, and then to become a paramedic, you have to be an EMT first.
Correct.
And then go on how long after that?
It's probably a full 2 years.
Wow,
And you
that's a
become-
lot of training.
It is. It is. Yep, it is. And the difference between an EMT and a paramedic, paramedics can do a couple of advanced skills. They're starting IVs. They're putting the breathing tube in for a cardiac arrest. And they also have above and beyond medications that they administer in the field. They have 30 plus medications
And-
that they
and-
administer.
In
And
the
those are
event.
things that an EMT would not be able to do.
No, the EMT at the basic level, they're administering about 5 different medications.
Okay.
All levels of responders give Narcan, which is why we're meeting here today.
Right, right.
It's not just the paramedic level.
Okay. Okay. That was
So that's a good segue into this. What do you guys see as driving the opioid problem now? You see it from a different perspective
Right.
than anybody
You
else
guys have been
does.
doing this for 20 years, so is this new to you, or is this spike new to you, or is this something that, I mean, we've been talking about it, unfortunately,
Right.
Terry, 8 to 10 years.
Yes.
But you gentlemen have 20 years of experience. What's changed? What's going on? Or what's on the street?
Yeah, I think the spike is related to the addiction, which is then related to the concentration, the purity of the heroin that's out there now. We saw a big change in 2013 with our number of overdoses and the severity of the overdoses that we were responding to.
Okay.
And that was when fentanyl began to be introduced to the heroin as the product that was sold.
And we keep hearing about fentanyl. We keep hearing about how the heroin that's available now, A, that there's more of it available, B, that it's cheaper, and C, that it's a much higher level of
Potency,
purity,
yeah.
of potency. Yeah, are those perceptions accurate? Is the heroin cheaper and more potent? And how does the fentanyl work into this? And
What exactly
I think
is
a lot
fentanyl?
of people
I
don't
mean,
understand this business about fentanyl. What
I mean,
is
the
it?
heroin is it's illegal. It's an illegal substance, but fentanyl is not. Correct? That's a
Correct. Fentanyl
synthetic drug?
It's a synthetic opioid. Yeah, it's made in a lab.
okay.
Yep, and it's if you're looking at morphine and comparing morphine and fentanyl, fentanyl is 400 times more powerful than morphine.
You know something?
400
That's why I just
times more
asked the
powerful.
question, because everyone understands morphine.
Wow.
They
Yeah, that's
understand,
true.
you know, for the most
Yep.
part, right?
Yep.
Yep.
But it's 400 times
More powerful.
more powerful.
Yes.
And what would you say with fentanyl? What would you typically be taking that for?
See-
If it was done appropriately
Right.
prescribed?
Prescribed by a physician, you'll see it in patch form
Mm-hmm.
for cancer patients, treating
Oh,
pain management. It has a large role in pain management. We also carry it on the ambulance as well.
Mm-hmm.
We use it for pain management as well. If you have a person who has a leg fracture, ankle fracture, arm fracture,
It would have to be something very serious, obviously.
something
with
very serious. Yeah, we
car
would, we
accident
would
of
treat
some
them
sort
in the
where-
field.
Right.
Yep.
Understood.
And typically, who would make the decision that they get fentanyl in the field?
In the field, the doctors. Not the doctors. I'm sorry. The paramedic would.
The paramedic?
Yep, the paramedic would.
The standard procedure, you get
Following
up
a
there,
protocol.
you're following a protocol, someone
Yep.
broke their leg in a car accident or something to that effect, a lot of pain,
Yep.
need to calm the patient down, I don't know the proper terminology.
It helps us facilitate moving them off of a soccer field or out of a car accident. Yep, because if you're in a lot of pain, it always helps to medicate them first
And
then
that happens pretty
immobilize the joint.
It happens pretty quickly.
It does. It's a rapid drug.
It's
Yeah.
a rapid drug. So these the bad guys here are taking this fentanyl and mixing it with heroin, therefore
They are.
giving a stronger high or a spike.
It's in my opinion that they're building their customer base with a really super strong,
Wow.
a fentanyl heroin mix.
Wow.
You build your
Building
customer.
the customer base.
Building your customer base. Yep.
Because people
Really
are
highly
so
addictive.
badly addicted, they actually want something that's more dangerous.
Yes.
But do they view it as being more dangerous?
The dealers themselves, or
The people who are taking it?
the people who are taking it.
Probably don't care
Probably
any of
not.
I
I
think they have a
probably
choice.
I heard anecdotally
really-
that
They're just beyond the point of
caring about
really
what they
having a choice.
themselves. Yeah.
I heard anecdotally that when there's a death and the user finds out about it, that they actually look to find that dealer that's dealing that because they know that it's a really high
Pushing the line.
pushing the line,
Wow.
yeah, pushing the limit. They'll search it out.
Wow. So they'll know somebody died from it,
Yep.
and
But
what do
they'll-
they think? They're not going to die?
But they'll
Well, they're
search
probably
out
just
that
pushing,
drug.
right? They're probably pushing, hey, Tommy sells the garbage
Yeah.
stuff, and Terry sells the good stuff, and
Right.
maybe trying to chase that, I would imagine.
Wow.
That's sad.
And what's the price structure like? We've heard a lot about how the heroin's pretty cheap. When they add in fentanyl, does that jack the price up a lot, or is it still pretty inexpensive?
I'm not really familiar. I know it's between $5 to $10 per dose is what we hear at the meetings that we go to.
Right.
So cheaper than a 6-pack of beer in a lot of
Wow.
circumstances, really.
The,
How long would you stay? Is it high? Is that the terminology? How long are you high when you're on this stuff? Do you know?
it could last in your system 2 to 4 hours.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yep.
And silly question maybe, I assume there's no quality control on this stuff. You have no idea really what you're getting
You don't
on
know
the
what
street.
you're getting. No, it could be late. They said that there's actually a lot of confusion out in the street right now of exactly what they're getting, because it looks alike. It's a look-alike.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Oh, there's no difference in
No
the
name
appearance.
brand on it or anything like that, right?
Correct. They could get what they thought was a chunk of heroin, and it ends up being a chunk of fentanyl.
But have you? So in your 20 years experience between the two of you, what's the difference you've seen? Is it just getting that much worse, or were we just not? We as a community, we as a Commonwealth, we as a country, were we just not paying attention to it 20 years ago, and this has been happening pretty much all along?
Or is fentanyl a
Is
whole?
this just a new game?
Is this a game changer?
I think, and you can tell me what you think, but I think fentanyl's been a game changer. We used to see, we would know when there was what we call the bad batch of heroin, because you would see a run of overdoses over a weekend or over a period of time.
Okay.
Whereas now it's more steady, where we know we're going to do 2 or 3 overdoses a day by rule.
And how many are you doing today?
We do 1.5 to 2 is what we're averaging now.
1.5 to 2.
A day.
A day.
Day.
And are you talking just the city of Lowell?
That's just in the city of Lowell. So in the city of Lowell, we had 579 opiate overdoses in 2015. So
Wow.
And how many of those were you able to save, if you would, with?
we don't have the final data of I'm just going to refer to my notes here, but of the 579, 284 of them would have died if some intervention hadn't been done. 146 were serious but stable, and then 149 were of a low-level overdose. These were somebody that maybe their family member found them and recognized
And started
that they
giving
weren't quite right.
Narcan.
Right. They would give Narcan, on one of the priority ones, one of the severe life threats.
Now, going back to what you asked, because they're adulterating the heroin with fentanyl, are we seeing an increase in life threats? And we do track that data, and we've seen an increase just in the last 6 months in immediate life threats. That's been a higher number.
Much higher number.
Much higher number.
So this isn't something that the Commonwealth or the community is just waking up to. This has been going on for a little while, but it's getting worse. Would that be fair from your perspective on
That's
the
a
street?
fair statement, yeah.
Well, I'd like to invite everybody right now. We're just going to go to a quick break, Middlesex Matters, and we'll be back talking to these fine gentlemen and finding out how we could try to conquer this, right, Terry?
Let's hope.
Let's hope. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Separate raw meats from other foods by using different cutting boards. 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Looking for these? You drive buzzed. It could be one very expensive ride.
First, you gotta make bail. Then pay me to get your car back.
Your insurance premiums will go through the roof.
And my legal fees just keep adding up. All told, it could end up costing you $10,000.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome back to Middlesex Matters. We're here with two fine gentlemen from Trinity EMS, Rick and Craig. Kirk. Sorry, Kirk. I said Craig. Kirk. And of course,
It's
with
okay,
Terry
Ted.
Downs. Yeah, Ted. Call me Ted.
Yep.
Thank you very much for joining us again. What we're talking about here today is what is going on with the opiate crisis in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Terry?
So help us with what the case numbers look like, and help us with is this a city problem? Is it wider than the city? And I ask you that because you guys, Trinity, you serve a lot of communities. Am I correct? Suburban, urban. So how many communities do you service?
So we have 13 911 communities. We have 7 in northern Massachusetts, and then we have another 6 in southern New Hampshire.
Okay. Is this a city problem?
It's
Is
a
it
city
just
problem.
a city problem?
It's not just a city problem. No, we certainly see this in the suburbs as well.
Okay.
So you're seeing the heroin overdose or the opiate addiction in, doesn't matter, socioeconomic, doesn't matter, bedroom community, city, town.
Yeah, all levels of education, very, very wide age range, all levels of races. I mean, there's
Economic levels make any difference?
No, they don't. No,
Not at all.
not at all. No,
So race does not, education does not, economic
No.
condition does not.
How about male, female? What's the
Yeah.
So males have the lion's share. They have about 64% of our overdoses are male, and about 36% are female.
Has that changed at all?
It hasn't. No, that's been steady.
That's been steady.
Yeah, and that goes back to, you wonder if you hear a lot of people say that it's the result of a surgery they've had. They were prescribed prescription narcotics for the pain, or a car accident or some kind of traumatic experience. And then once that prescription ran out, they had formed an addiction to the opioids, and they had turned to heroin. And you think about men do more laborious jobs where they might be prone to an injury. We're not the best drivers historically. We don't make the best decisions with our bodies. We grow up playing football and hockey. So these are the guys that might be prone to fall victim.
prone to some type of injury, right?
Sure.
And so is there a typical patient?
Yeah, if you were to draw a picture
What would
of a
it tend to
typical
look like?
person.
It's hard. It's been my experience that it's your brother, it's your cousin, it's your friend, it's your significant other, it's somebody you work with, your coworker, and that's what I like to stress. It's anybody and everybody.
See, I think it's important, from my opinion and Terry's opinion as well. We've been saying this for some time, that this just isn't, and I've used some pretty harsh language when we've talked about this, but to try to prove a point that this isn't that person over there.
Right.
I think growing up, we always had this discussion. It was those people. This was their problem.
Yeah,
They
the
created
junkies.
this, the junkies.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of other colorful words, but I think you just hit the nail on the head when you start talking about it's your neighbor, it's your, your uncle, your aunt, your brother, your sister, a loved one. And that's what I think has been at least changing a little bit. The dialogue's been changing a little bit, at least up on Beacon Hill, where we're taking this, I think, in a pretty serious manner. And but quite frankly, I think we need to move faster. And we're trying. We're trying.
I agree with you.
Yeah, we need to move a lot faster to get in front of this, and I'm not so sure we will get in front of it.
Well, the numbers keep growing, right? And the response is slower than we would like. That's for sure.
Going back to the number of people last year,
579 overdoses
In
that
Lowell.
we did in the city of Lowell.
Okay, so 579 overdoses, which basically means somebody called Trinity, you showed up, and of the 579, there's always this critique or concern that it's just the same 200 people getting called 3 times. Those are the bad guys. Those are the bad players. Is that the case? Is the 579 players? It's Tommy and Terry and Tommy and Terry and Tommy and Terry over and over again.
No, not at all. And that's a great point. Of the 579 calls that we did, we had 443 different patients. Most of them we only contacted once. 349 of them we only contacted once, so more than half. A handful of people we contacted 3-4 times. We had one gentleman that we dealt with 7 times, and one woman that we dealt with 10 times in that year. But they're the outliers. The majority of people are, we deal with them once in an overdose situation.
So the outlier that you just stated, you had a gentleman in 2015, you dealt with him 7 times, a woman 10 times.
Yes.
But the vast majority, and percentagely, that would 65%
Yes.
maybe higher, you dealt with those folks just once.
Correct.
So the idea of
that's not what people know. People
no,
don't
people
think
don't, because everybody thinks that there are frequent flyers out there, and that you guys encounter them over and over again, and it's kind of entered into lore, local lore, that it's this, as you say, a small number of people who are driving the problem. But you guys are saying that's not accurate. There's not a small number of people who are overdosing over and over again, devouring most of the resources that you have available.
Yeah, 443 unique patients out of 579 overdose calls.
It's got to be closer to 80, 75, 80.
And the other clarification that we wanted to make too is that 579 patients in that year were not all Lowell residents either. They're residents from other communities in the Commonwealth. We track that statistic as well and provide that data, that 30 of them came from this community or 30 of them came from this community. They're not all just Lowell residents.
So they're coming into the city because they've got a medical emergency, or they're coming into the city for some other reason?
Some
Maybe they
housing
work
or
here, or they go to school here?
Yeah, they might be here for work. They may have been driving through. They may have been here to buy the heroin. They might be visiting a relative, but they just happen to overdose here.
Here.
Here in Lowell, yeah.
And of course, this is where they'd be brought for treatment in this region.
There's some
Typically.
treatment there, yes.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Do you know, this would be a long shot, but like the city of Boston, how do we stack up against other cities and towns in the area? Which main cities, I would think. I mean, Boston seems to have their hands full with this as well.
Yeah, Boston seems to be pretty busy. It's kind of tough to measure apples to apples, but I know we work closely with a provider of Nashua and Manchester, New Hampshire, to kind of model our tracking with their tracking and kind of see if there's a trend that they see happening. We communicate with other services to see if there's a spike in overdoses in one region. We want to make sure that we know that might be coming down the pike for us as well.
Now, when you have the opportunity to talk to these individuals or these folks or these teams of people, are you picking up any other ideas, things that we should be doing here in Massachusetts that might make it a little bit easier, things that, because to be quite frank with you, there's a whole bunch of things that we should be doing, and I think we just need to put Mr. Downs in charge of it, and it'll get done. But are there any ideas hot off the press that you think that might be something that you've heard about in the field?
I mean, honestly, it's tough for us because we're on the reactive side, right? Somebody calls 911 because there's been an overdose, and we respond and we treat the patient. We take them to the hospital. So as far as what we can do proactively before that, I think we're going in a good place as far as monitoring the prescriptions that are being written by these doctors. You know, you're not getting 60 pills, you're going to get a week's worth of pills, and then if you're still having pain, you can call your physician and you can talk to them about getting that prescription rewritten. So I think there's a good start on the legislative end to try to deal with this and try to stave off a potential addict from being victimized by this.
So you're talking there about the new legislation that was just enacted on Beacon Hill. It's now in effect in Boston, and Rep. Golden certainly was involved in helping to get that drafted and put through. So maybe some help from that end in terms of the initial writing of prescriptions, no longer lots of opioids right from the start.
Well, it never made much sense, to be honest with you. I mean, when my dad was alive, I'd bring him to his different events, his different doctor's appointments events, like a party.
Those became events,
They did become events. But I would keep a diary of exactly what he was on, so each doctor knew what he was taking. How we haven't been doing this or kind of controlling this, because especially with a heart medicine, and I'm way out of my league here, that's for you folks to kind of talk about, but what interacts with, does A interact with B? Well, it only does if you take C. Well, he was taking A through M, you know, a whole bunch of things he was taking, and I always found that troublesome up on Beacon Hill when there was some pushback from the Medical Society saying that they don't want you really looking under the hood of what we're doing, and I never viewed it that way. I viewed it as, you know, I shouldn't be walking around with this notepad of all my stuff that my dad has. I should be able to go to a prescription monitoring and just fire it in to make sure that nothing interacts. It also helps having a wife who's a pharmacist. That's also a little helpful as well.
Yes.
But that's kind
And
of
Joni is the brains of the outfit.
She is actually the
We know that.
Yeah, hero to zero. I mean, I'm going to let you pick, let you choose. You know. So
One of the things we have to ask you, because I wonder if there's some misconceptions about it, is Narcan. We hear about it all the time. Now we're hearing about people who are abusing Narcan in the sense that they will get 4 people together and they're all going to use, and one person is the designated, I won't use it tonight, I'll handle the Narcan, so more will be available if somebody overdoses. How important is Narcan How long does it work? What are its limitations?
So Narcan itself is an opioid antagonist.
What does that mean?
It goes into the central nervous system in the brain, pushes the opiates off of the receptors. So the problem with opiates is when you take too much, you go unconscious, unresponsive, you stop breathing, and your pupils also go pinpoint, like two little pinpoints if you were to pull back their eyelids. And once you've stopped breathing, it can lead to cardiac arrest if not intervened. And the way we intervene is we administer Narcan. First responders are trained to administer 1 milligram up each side of the nose. The Narcan goes in, pushes the opioids off, and the person goes from being unconscious, unresponsive, and not breathing to sitting up, worst day they've ever had. They actually experience withdrawal symptoms.
Immediately.
Immediately.
Now this is
within 60 seconds.
So
to
this is
90
similar
seconds.
to, that Narcan is similar to any type of nasal decongestant that you would take at home. It's a spray.
More effective. The
Yeah.
nasal, yes, it's
But it's
administered the same
s-
form. Yep. We also give it intravenously as well.
But so 90 seconds-ish.
90 seconds-ish, they immediately, it restores their breathing, and they
How about
become
their
conscious.
cognitive, I mean, they know
They're
that
groggy.
they're
but,
groggy.
But they come
Okay.
back, yeah, they're groggy, and they're, like I said, they're experiencing the worst day they've ever had. They're now nauseous, they are unhappy, understandably so. I mean, you put them back into that world of the pain that they were experiencing, whether it was physical or emotional pain, something they were working to take away.
So you took their high away.
We did, but we also
To save
saved
their
their
life.
life. To save their life,
Right.
absolutely. And Narcan only works on opiates. It does not work on anything else. So if they've taken something else, the Narcan's not going to have any effect whatsoever. And it's also
Understood, okay.
it's also a very benign drug in that there's no adverse side effects of giving it where it's not needed.
So
Can't
after
hurt
you
anybody
do
with
this, after you administer the Narcan,
Yep.
and the person sits up 90 seconds, what is the next half an hour? What is that? What is their world like?
So Narcan has, once it's in your body, has a half-life of 60 to 90 minutes.
Okay.
And then it can wear off. I always tell my folks, it's a temporary bridge, not a permanent solution. Sometimes they will need more than one dose of Narcan to be revived and get breathing again. In fact, it's been our experience that they've needed up to 3 doses of Narcan to get them fully breathing again and awake.
Does that depend on how potent the drug is, or how
It
much
does.
they took?
It does. It does. It depends on, the amount of heroin or whether it was adulterated with your fentanyl, mixed with the fentanyl.
If there's fentanyl, it's harder to bring them around.
It's a lot higher dose of Narcan. Absolutely.
And how long? We keep hearing in the press about how Narcan is an overdose reversal medication, and the implication is you take the Narcan and you're all set. Is that accurate? You say it's a bridge.
Temporary bridge, not a
Doctors
permanent solution.
keep telling us they should be going to the hospital. What's the real
Immediately.
story?
The real story is, we always drive them towards going to the hospital. We highly recommend that they be seen and treated. But if they are aware of their surroundings, they're alert, they're oriented to person, place, and time, they are free to sign off, to refuse to go to the hospital.
Which
but
could
what's-
be a definite problem, and we could follow that up at another segment. Gentlemen, thank you very much, and my apologies, but we get so into this. We do have to wrap up here at
important.
Middlesex Matters, and to Trinity Ambulance, you folks are the real heroes out there on the street every day, making sure that we're safe, and we really sincerely appreciate it. So on behalf of Terry and myself and the entire crew here at Middlesex Matters, thank you for everything that you do. And we want to thank everybody for joining us here today at Middlesex Matters, another exciting segment, and we hope to see you soon.